Now, many of you will know that you are working on a project and you get to that final point and everything has gone so smoothly, and then you've got to do the dreaded buttonholes, be it dressmaking or you're making cushions and pillows and you put in a buttonhole fastening on the back of them. And it's that final bit where you think, right, I need these to go perfectly. Well, we've got a solution for you. The new Binding Buttonhole feet. There's two different versions depending on which machine you've got. I'll go through that in a little bit more detail in a short while. But basically, they both look very similar. It's just the fitting is slightly different on them. But it's a buttonhole foot that looks like your normal buttonhole feet. It's all metal down the side here. It's a very strong foot. But it comes with this stabiliser plate. Okay. Now, you can use it on its own, but I would always use it with this unless you weren't able to. The only time you wouldn't be able to use it with this is if you were doing a buttonhole in the middle of an item. Say you were doing a double-breasted jacket and you needed to do a buttonhole in the middle of the garment. This is only going to be compatible when you're working down the edge of something because of this bar here. But any other time, you're going to be able to use it with the stabiliser plate. So it's in two separate sections, and on the bottom of the buttonhole foot we've got these chunky rubber grips here, and when that is on here the fabric goes between the plate and the foot. Okay, so rather than the foot just going on the machine on its own and your feed dogs pulling the fabric through, your fabric is going to be clamped in place on the buttonhole foot, and the feed dogs are going to be pulling the foot through instead. So we've got these rubber grips, a rubber sticker on the bottom here as well, so that the feed dogs aren't pulling against the metal of the plate. So they're going to be pulling against the rubber grip on the bottom of there, and your fabric is going to be clamped in between. Now, this is a project that I recently made, my banana blouse. I absolutely love it. But you're making a blouse and you get to that final bit with the buttonholes and you dread it, because if they get messed up, then that's it. You're pulling your hair out with it. So these 5 buttons here weren't too bad. What I've got there is 2 layers of fabric plus a little bit in the seam allowance here from where the placket is attached on, but I've also got 2 layers of interfacing as well. So where these buttonholes are, I've mainly got 4 layers of fabric, so I've got 2 layers of fabric and 2 layers of my cotton interfacing. Down at this bottom buttonhole, because I've got the hem facing on the blouse, if I just undo this, you can see that we've got a lot more layers there. Okay, so we've got the hem and the facing of the hem and the placket as well, and the interfacing that's inside there, and then also at the top there the bulk of the seams where they're actually meeting. And using this foot, it just went through the machine with no problem at all, and the buttonhole was absolutely perfect and it matched all the others. And then the one that I was most impressed with is this one at the top, where we've got the neckband, the standing neckband collar. And if I just undo this, I can see it's a very small buttonhole. It's only a small button, and when you're doing a buttonhole that size, you need it to be spot on, because if it ends up being any smaller, there's a chance that the button isn't going to go through it. But in this section here, then I lost count of the layers of fabric that were in here. We've got the outer and the inner of the collar, but then I've also got interfacing on both sides of those, so we're already at 4 layers. But then we've got this area in this bottom corner where the seam allowance comes round, and then we've also got the area on this bottom section where the placket is actually attached into the collar neckband. So there's a lot of layers of fabric in there, and I know if I was just using my normal buttonhole foot to feed that through the machine, it's lumpy, it's bumpy, and I would have to be forcing it through the machine to make sure that it feeds properly. But with this foot, because my fabric was clamped in between the plate and the foot itself, All the feed dogs on the machine needed to do was pull through the foot. It didn't need to pull my fabric through at all because that was clamped in place. So it's perfect for thicker fabrics, different layers of fabrics, you know, especially if you're using like coating fabrics, wools and that kind of thing. But also if you're working with floaty fabrics, these are the kind of things that can get chewed up in your machine when you're doing buttonholes on them. But because you know, it's clamped in between, the fabric isn't going to shift anywhere. Okay, so we'll have a look at it in action in a moment, but let's just go through the two versions. So there's one of them that is suitable for the V series and the X series. So this is your VQ2, V5 and the V7, and then the XV, XJ1. Okay, it's also compatible with the XP1, but the XP1 comes with this foot, so you won't need that one. And then this version is suitable with the A series machine. So this is the A16, the A50, A60, A80, the A150, and then the F series, so the F420 and the F480. And then it's also compatible with the MV1100, 1300, 1800Q and the 2600. I think I've got all of them there. You know, any other machines that are of a similar model to those, it will be compatible with them as well. Okay, so in the box you get the foot and the plate, and then you also get your list of instructions as well. So let's see how it attaches onto the machine and see it in action. So I'm going to stitch out a sample on the A80 machine. So this is one of the A series, it's at the higher end of the A series, and it's the one that's got 80 different stitches on it. Okay, now the first thing we need to do is attach the foot. So I need to take off my standard presser foot there, but we leave the shank adapter on here, the little presser foot adapter, sorry. And then we need to attach on the buttonhole foot. Now it attaches on all the machines in the same way, but what you want to do is feed it on from the back here, okay? And you may just need to raise your foot just a little, well, the shank just a little bit higher, okay? So using your lever, whether that's on the inside or on the back, depending on which machine you've got, you can raise that up just a little bit higher, okay? And then we want to pop that in place, and the easiest way to pop it on is to put the foot down and it will clip in place, okay? It's got these two little buoys on either side here, like a little stabiliser buoy, and they go around the presser foot adapter, and that stops it from wobbling from side to side as much, okay? So it's very well supported on the machine. You can see when we've got the foot up that the stabiliser plate drops down, and it's only the foot that's coming up and down, and it's just held in place with the little guide here. Okay, so I'm going to select a standard buttonhole. So on this machine it's stitch number 44. So I'm just going to turn the jog dial through until I get to stitch number 44. It tells me to use the A foot, and I'm using the A2, so that's the A, you know, all the buttonhole feet are the A feet. This one is the A2 because it's compatible for this machine. And I'm just going to pop my fabric in here. So what I'm going to do is create layers similar to what I would have had in the placket on the blouse. So we're going to go with 3 layers of the cotton here. I haven't got any interfacing in this, but on my blouse I did have the interfacing in there. And rather than this going underneath all the foot, it's going to go in between, okay? So you can see that that's going to slide in between here. And remember with your buttonholes that the fabric comes towards you first and not away from you, like when you're normally sewing, okay? And then you set the size of the buttonhole in the back here. Now you may find it easier to do that when the foot is off the machine, but you just set the size of your buttonhole here. So what we would do is you just pop your button in this area, and then you just clamp it in place for the size of the buttonhole that you want to do, okay? So once you've got your fabric lined up where you want it, we pop the foot down. And if I now pull on this fabric, you can see I'm really pulling that hard, and I have to pull it really hard for it to actually shift and move. So it's not going to go anywhere. But we don't need to worry about our feed dogs pulling that fabric through, because the feed dogs are only going to be pulling the foot through. Okay. Final thing we need to do is we need to bring the buttonhole lever down here. So that comes down and it's going behind this marker here and in front of this marker at the back, and that is what measures the size of the buttonhole. And this is the reason for the two different feet. It's because the buttonhole levers are different on different machines, and that's why there's two different versions of the feet. Okay. The other thing it does say in the instructions is you only pull this lever down once you've put your presser foot down and you're actually ready to sew, because when this is up, because we've got the plate underneath here and it's a much thicker foot, if I bring this lever down, it won't necessarily come all the way down and it's going to interfere with the edge of the foot here, okay? So you want to get your fabric in place, put the foot down, and then bring the lever down, okay? Now, we're now all set up and ready to go, so all I'm going to do is press the start button, and that's going to start sewing my buttonhole. So you can see what it's doing here is it's feeding this plate through instead of my fabric, and my fabric is clamped in place between the foot and the stabiliser plate. Okay, so I'm going to raise my needle. Now before I raise the foot up, I'm going to put the buttonhole lever foot back up and then raise the foot. The buttonhole foot slides back down. I can then pull this out, and there is my buttonhole. Okay, it's perfectly even all the way down. I didn't have to touch the fabric at all to feed it through, and what's even better is on the back it looks just as good. So now we're going to have a go with a slippery fabric. So I've got a crepe fabric here, crepe polyester fabric. You can see very, very flimsy. And what I'm going to do is fold it in half, so I've got 2 layers. Because ideally, you know, if you were doing this down like the front of a shirt dress or something like that, you would probably have, you know, at least 2 layers of the fabric there. So I'm going to slide this in under the foot. And again, I'm just raising the foot a little bit higher there, just to for ease of sliding the fabric under. Position where I want the buttonhole to be. Bring the presser foot lever down so my fabric is now clamped in place, and then bring the buttonhole lever down to measure the size of the buttonhole, and then just press the start button. Remember to raise the buttonhole lever before raising your presser foot, and then we can pull that out, cut the thread, and we can see there again another perfect buttonhole on both sides on a very flimsy fabric, just 2 layers of that flimsy fabric with no stabiliser or interfacing in it either. Okay, now the final fabric that we're going to do a buttonhole with is a thicker wool coating fabric, okay? But this time what I want to do is I want to go over 2 separate layers. So I'm going to fold this like so, but then I'm going to fold it again, okay? And I think what I might do actually is I'll do 1 layer like this, and then I've got a bit more fabric to play with. I'm going to fold that one in and then fold that over there, okay? And I want to do the buttonhole going from 1 layer to the other. So imagine that this might be your seam allowance that's trapped inside, you know, inside your coat or whatever it is you may have made, but we've got these multiple layers here. So I'll just neaten that up so we're on the edge here. Slide this underneath. So I'm going to start at this point here where I've only got 2 layers of my fabric, so you can see that we've got the 4 layers at the back and just the 2 layers at the front here. Pop the foot down, bring the buttonhole lever down, and just press start again. and it's like it doesn't even know that there's multiple layers of fabric there, because the feed dogs are feeding through the plate. They are not feeding the fabric. The fabric is clamped in place with the foot. And look at that, it's absolutely spot on. Both sides, so you can see there where we've gone to the 4 layers of fabric. So we've gone from 2 layers here up to 4 layers here. And that's the back. The front looks even better. Well, it looks great both sides. So there you go, you can have perfect buttonholes every single time, and the only thing left to do there now is just use your seam ripper or your small scissors just to cut down the centre of your buttonholes there.